Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to our hybrid seminar on BRICS expansion, Southeast Asian perspectives and motivation. This hybrid seminar is organized by the Regional Strategic and Political Studies program from the ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute in Singapore. My name is Hei Won, a research officer here at ISEAS, and I will be your MC for today. Before we begin, please allow me to draw your attention to a few housekeeping matters. This event is a hybrid event, an online and an in-person audience here in Singapore. There will be a coffee break served for the audience attending in person today. For our online audience, if you encounter any technical issues, please use the chat function to reach out to our technical support team. To ask questions, please use the Q&A function, stating your name and affiliation together with your question. You can send in your questions at any time during the discussion. For our audience here at ISEAS, please raise your hands during the Q&A segment and state your name and affiliation before posing your questions. Please note as well that this event is conducted under Chatham House rules. Do not attribute any comments or quotes to the speakers without their explicit permission. Thank you for your cooperation. We will now begin our first panel of the seminar. This panel is titled The BRICS and its Aspiring Members, Thailand and Malaysia. Moderating this panel is Dr. Ian Story, Senior Fellow from the RSPS program at ISEAS. I will now hand over the time to Dr. Ian Story.
Thank you very much, Hei Won, and a good morning and a very warm welcome to the ISEAS Yusof Ishak Institute. This morning to those of you who have joined us in person in the room and those of you who have joined us online from all over the world. My name is Ian Story. I'm a senior fellow at ISEAS. This webinar is brought at the Regional Strategic and Political Studies program. The Chatham House rule, you got that, so I'll move on. As you can see from today's program, the event panel sessions on BRICS, when my colleagues and I put together this webinar, let me just borrow this for a moment. At that time, Thailand and Malaysia had applied to join, so that's why this panel is called Aspiring Members. They are no longer aspiring members, they are members. And even worse, the second panel is called Indonesia and Vietnam, Current Ambivalence and Future Prospects. And they are also members now of BRICS, and we did not expect that. We got that one wrong, so we apologize, but hopefully our speakers will make up for our mistakes. So I have two tasks this morning. The first is to introduce our two speakers, and the second is to give a quick overview of the development of BRICS, Southeast Asian countries' interests in it, and what happened recently at the BRICS summit in Kazan in Russia just last week. So let me start by introducing our two speakers first. I'm delighted to be joined on my right by Dr. Jitipat Poonkam, from Thailand. Dr. Jitipat is a professor of international relations and director of the International Studies program at Thammasat University in Bangkok, and he is a close watcher of Russia-Southeast Asia relations. On my left is Dr. Ong Kian Ming, a former member of the Malaysian Parliament for the Democratic Action Party and also former Deputy Minister for International Trade and Industry. He is currently Pro-Vice Chancellor for External Engagement at Taylor's University in Malaysia. So before I give the floor to them, I'll do my quick spiel on the development of BRICS. I think most of you probably know the term was coined in 2001 by an economist at Goldman Sachs to describe the high potential economies of Brazil, Russia, India, and China. The four countries formalized the group with a summit in Yekaterinburg in Russia in 2009 during the global financial crisis, which had exposed the shortcomings of the US-led Bretton Woods financial system. In 2010, a year later, South Africa joined, adding the S to BRICS, and the first five-member BRICS summit took place in Sanya in China in 2011. In 2023, BRICS announced that membership would be open to other countries, and earlier this year, Ethiopia, Egypt, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates became members. Argentina and Saudi Arabia were also invited to join at this time, but Argentina declined because it had a new president who seems rather fond of the US dollar. Saudi Arabia Saudi Arabia has yet to communicate formal acceptance of its invitation, although it participates in the group's activities. So what are the goals of BRICS? BRICS has both economic and geopolitical aims. In 2015, it established a new development bank, the NDB, which was designed to provide both members and non-members with loans for infrastructure development, and was seen as a supplement to the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. According to BRICS, the bank has approved financing amounting to around $10 billion for over 100 projects around the world. The 4 original members have also created an alternative to the SWIFT international economic messaging system, from which Russia was suspended following its invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The BRICS countries aim to escape or overthrow, depending on your point of view, or lessen the dominance of the US dollar by encouraging the de-dollarization of global trade. This they want to do by encouraging the use of each other's currencies for trade transactions. BRICS has also mooted a BRICS currency, though according to most economists, I'm not an economist, this remains at best a distant prospect and at worst somewhat unfeasible. As regards geopolitics, BRICS members promote multipolarity and a stronger voice for developing countries in the global south. Nearly all of the members express dissatisfaction to one degree or another with what they see as the inequalities in the current international order. So what are the shortcomings, the weaknesses, if you like, of BRICS? There's quite a few, in fact. First of all, China has outsized influence within the group because it has the largest economy, responsible for 70% of the group's economic output. And at the same time, China's economy, as we all know, has been slowing down since the pandemic. In fact, among the 5 original members, only India has a particularly robust GDP growth at the moment. China is the top trade partner of all the BRICS countries, but despite representing more than 1/3 of global GDP, trade between the other members is in some cases rather limited. In addition, challenging the dominance of the US dollar will be very difficult, as it is used in almost over 90% of global trade transactions. Another problem is the BRICS members have rather diverse economic structures with varying degrees of development, industrialization, and trade specialization. And this makes forging cooperative economic policy something of a challenge. Regarding both economics and geopolitics, some observers see BRICS as a vehicle to promote Chinese and Russian interests. Both countries are opposed to US primacy or hegemony in the international system and seek to dilute US power through promoting multipolarity and building an alternative global financial architecture. The addition of Iran earlier this year has only deepened the perception that BRICS is anti-Western in outlook, and this might strain some members' relations with the US, particularly India and Brazil, which want to preserve their non-aligned foreign policies. China and Russia are keen to expand BRICS membership quickly. India prefers a slower pace. As with any international grouping whose membership expands, consensus decision-making becomes harder the more members you induct. Indeed, we already saw signs of this at a meeting of the BRICS foreign ministers in September on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. They failed to issue a joint statement due to a lack of consensus on new members. This, of course, is not uncommon in other international forums, as we've seen over the past decade. Following our BRICS expansion earlier this year, the grouping announced essentially a moratorium on new full members, but added a new category of membership called BRICS Partners or BRICS Partnership. And this designation is presumable towards full membership, although this has not quite been agreed among the member states as yet. At the Kazan summit just last week, 13 countries became BRICS partners, including 4 from Southeast Asia. I mentioned them earlier, Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and Vietnam, and they are the subject of our webinar today. In June, Thailand became the first Southeast Asian country to apply to join BRICS, followed by Malaysia in July. Indonesia's a very interesting case. President Jokowi had mulled the idea of joining. He said Indonesia wasn't in a hurry to join. He was weighing up the pros and cons. There was a feeling in Indonesia that membership of BRICS might somehow compromise Indonesia's non-aligned status. However, Jokowi's successor, President Prabowo, who took office on the 20th of October, 2 days before the Kazan summit began, he has taken the opposite view of his predecessor and decided that, in fact, joining BRICS would give Indonesia's foreign policy some balance because it's also applied to join the OECD. Hence, the Indonesian foreign minister was sent to Kazan. Indonesia was welcomed as a partner, and that essentially was the Prabowo administration's first major foreign policy action since it took office. Vietnam also became a BRICS partner at the summit. As I said, that took some of us by surprise when we were organizing this seminar. That's because Hanoi had said that BRICS membership was compatible with its economic development goals and its multi-directional foreign policy. But unlike Thailand and Malaysia, it didn't announce that it had submitted an application. And in fact, we don't know when Vietnam did so. Maybe our Vietnamese speaker can enlighten us on this. Myanmar has also expressed an interest in joining BRICS, but for reasons unknown, the junta did not send a representative to Kazan. We're not quite sure why that is. Myanmar is quite interested in joining the new development bank because it needs loans for its dire economic situation. But Myanmar wasn't represented, as far as I can tell, at the summit. Laos, too, has also expressed an interest in joining, and in fact, the president of Laos attended the Kazan summit, but Laos was not admitted. Again, not quite sure what happened there. Maybe it's something to do with the size of the economy. Perhaps Jitipat can enlighten us later on Thailand's neighbor and its application to join BRICS. Cambodia is also a likely contender to join, and it has close relations with both China and Russia. But again, it didn't send anybody to the Kazan summit. So again, not quite sure what's happening to Laos and Cambodia. So of the 3 remaining ASEAN member states, Brunei and the Philippines have not expressed any interest in any kind of relationship with BRICS, and neither has Singapore. I looked at the membership criteria of BRICS, and you cannot apply for membership if you have imposed sanctions on one of the member states, which of course Singapore did following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So that more or less rules Singapore out. of membership of BRICS. Instead, Singapore has emphasized the key role that ASEAN plays in strengthening economic ties with other countries around the world. Okay, so with that brief overview of BRICS over, I'd like to turn to our two other speakers. Dr. Jitipat will speak first on Thailand and the reasoning behind its application to join BRICS. So Jitipat, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ian. Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you, ISEAS, for the kind invitation. As Ian mentioned, I think BRICS aims are twofold. One is economic, and another one is geopolitical. Economic is to build alternative economic architecture, especially so-called de-dollarization of global trade and finance, which I think it's the latter is significant to the contestation to liberal rule-based order. And geopolitical motivation behind BIC, I think, is largely about the multipolarization of the global order and a challenge to liberal rule-based order. Thailand is interested in the former rather than the latter, is interested in more on economic motivation of BRICS rather than geopolitical or / political dimensions. The rationale for Thailand's aspiration to BRICS membership, I think, is a quick win, a short-term foreign policy bid to bolster the domestic economic agenda of the Paetongtarn Shinawatra government. I think one quick note, I think the 4 ASEAN countries are partner countries, not a full member yet. Thailand, I think, is still an aspiring power, an aspiring BRICS member. In other words, Thailand is in search for BRICS full member in the near future, as Foreign Minister Marit has mentioned during the Kazan summit. At the same time, Thailand is striving for being a member of OECD as well. I think for OECD membership is a medium to long-term goal and would definitely take longer time than BRICS accession. But in the long run, OECD membership would be a thorough reform and policy adjustment, the one that Thailand really needs. Today, I would like to talk about Thailand aspiring BRICSism and address 3 key points. Number 1, I will talk about Thailand's multi-alignment. Number 2, I'll talk about motivations behind Thailand's BRICS membership. And 3, the challenges ahead, in particular challenges of multi-stakeholderisms of Thai foreign policy. Let's start with the first one about the multi-alignment. On the surface, Thailand BRICS aspiration raised a few eyebrows internationally, in particular in the West, since it looked like the country has chosen side in the highly competitive geopolitical canvas. But we have to put this as application into a broader context of Thailand multi-alignment. Thailand's enthusiasm for joining multilateral cooperative frameworks can be represented in its engagement with the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, or IPEF, and potential partnerships, OECD. Bangkok decided to join US-led IPEF in May 2022. Thailand is one of the 7 ASEAN members, joining Australia, New Zealand, and some others in IPEF. Strategically, Bangkok is eagerly looking to capture trade and investment from US companies, in particular the semiconductor firms, diversifying production from China to Southeast Asia. However, despite being one of the 5 US allies in the Indo-Pacific, Thailand has been at the low key on the radar of US for the last decades or so. According to the latest Lowy Institute Asia Power Index, Thailand-US alliance network is pretty weak in terms of defense dialogues and joint exercises. Also, Thailand is not part of US-led Trans-Pacific Partnership, TPP, which is now turned to CPTPP. Under the Pheu Thai party leadership, Thailand has sought to enhance proactive economic diplomacy in order to foster and further trade investment and competitiveness. The country officially expressed its interest in applying for full BRICS membership in May 2024. As I said before, it's created a surprise in global and Thai politics since Bangkok has officially submitted a letter of intent to begin the OECD accession process a few months earlier in February. Some might claim that Thailand's engagement with IPEF alongside with pursuit of BRICS and OECD memberships demonstrate its hedging stance or strategic effort to diversify its economic partnerships. However, if we look closer, Thailand's aspiration for BRICS membership is complicated by what I call hedging by default approach. Some senior MFA officials disagree with this potential political move. Many fear that the BRICS move would delay or jeopardize the country OECD admission. Fortunately, shortly after the BRIC application, the OECD Council agreed to proceed with Thailand accession process. So as it turned out, OECD and its key members, especially Germany, supported Thailand bid. Nevertheless, some Thai ambassadors were summoned by their European counterparts requesting to know the rationales or motivation. What are the motivations behind Thailand's BRICS move? I would say four motivations. First, I think it's a quick win. The Seta and now Paetongtarn governments have encountered difficulties achieving key strategic or foreign policy moves in the past 1 year or so. All ministers and advisors are asked to find any quick win achievements to boost the popularity of Pheu Thai-led government and to regain public trust so that in the long run, it can win the national elections ahead. The second motivation is that Thailand's interest in BRICS is driven and determined by economic motivations rather than geopolitical ones. Rather than choosing the size of alternative international order, Bangkok envisions BRICS as part of its advancement of its proactive economic foreign policy. For example, on the sideline of ASEAN Leaders Summit in Laos early this month, Prime Minister Paetongtarn and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken held a bilateral discussion. Secretary Blinken inquired about Thailand's application to join the BRICS group, while Prime Minister Paetongtarn explained to the American counterpart that Thailand's decision to pursue BRICS membership is driven by economic reasons. The aim is to expand the economy by entering larger markets with significant population. Third, Thailand-BRICS partnership is endorsed by some local business community, which envisions BRICS as economic opportunity. Upon becoming a member, they claim that Thailand's trade benefits within BRICS are expected to increase significantly, not only through access to new markets, but also through enhanced closer cooperation and the diversification of global supply chains. For instance, Mr. Sanan Angbonkul, chairman of Thai Chamber of Commerce, said that, quote unquote, Thailand's aim to join both groups, OECD and BRICS, reflects its efforts to expand global cooperation. At the same time, Thailand must maintain balance and manage relationships with countries that hold differing positions. Chaichan Charoensuk, chairman of Thai National Shippers Council, backed Thailand's decision to join the BRICS group as well. He noted that BRICS is a group of emerging economies which present an opportunity for Thailand to increase its exports. China and India in particular are countries with large economies. From business point of view, the BRICS groups account for approximately 18% of Thailand's exports. The fourth motivation is BRICS' extraordinary move was influenced by the Pheu Thai party inner circle, including former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, rather than by bureaucracies or Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Thaksin maintained close ties with Russian President Vladimir Putin when he served as the Prime Minister from 2001 to 2006. Under Thaksin government, a visa-free policy was agreed upon in 2003. Interestingly, the push for BRICS membership was made after then Foreign Minister Pan Pri abrupt resignation during the cabinet reshuffle in late April. And Thaksin's long-serving foreign policy protege, Marit Sangiampong, was handpicked as a new foreign minister. A close Thai-Russia relationship is key to the government's BRICS decision. Russia has extended invitation for Thailand to attend the BRICS-related meetings as observers. First, Foreign Minister Maritz participated in BRICS dialogue in June in Nizhny Novgorod. Then Paetongtarn Shinawatra attended the BRICS Parliamentary Forum in Vladivostok later that month. Recently, on behalf of Prime Minister, Foreign Minister Maritz has attended the fourth BRICS Plus summit in Kazan. Now, which lead me to the last part. What are the challenges of and for multi-stakeholderisms for Thailand? I think I come up with three challenges, at least three challenges. The first challenge is domestic politics. I think Thailand's partner status is good enough, but does not feel a quick win for the government. Thailand initially aims to be a BRICS member, but what Thailand gets is a BRICS partner country, though not yet full members. As a matter of fact, Thailand was informed in advance by a senior Russian foreign ministry official that there was a postponement of membership during the BRICS summit meeting in Kazan. BRICS does not want a rapid enlargement. However, Thailand is searching for a full membership. Foreign Minister Marit said during the BRICS summit that Thailand, as an aspiring BRICS members, plan to join BRICS in the near future. And I think it might be a chance next year when India becomes the incoming chair of BRICS. The second challenge is economic one. The ultimate aim of 4 ASEAN members, including Thailand, is to enhance trade opportunities by joining BRICS partnership. According to Maritz, Thailand wanted to become a BRICS member as the group represents twofold. One, emerging markets with significant economic potential, and two, the ability to enhance the role of developing countries in shaping the global direction. However, we must realize that BRICS is not FTA. IPEF is not FTA. BRICS is not FTA. First thing first, the challenge is that trade access and acceleration can be gleaned from bilateral relation with or without being a BRICS Plus member. In addition, Thailand is much more interested in C of BRICS than other members. In other words, the BRICS partnership could render even more trade and investment dependence on China, as China is clearly one of the key driving forces for BRICS. Lastly, BRICS and especially Russia's agenda for building an alternative platform for international payments, which is often dubbed as the de-dollarization, complicated Southeast Asian membership and their relations with the Western world. Thailand's temptation is still ambiguous on this matter. However, against the backdrop of Asian financial crisis of 1997, the country agrees with the necessity of reforming international financial architecture spearheaded by the BRICS. Foreign Minister Marit said during his remark at Kazan summit, quote unquote, the international financial system for developing countries should be responsive and help provide social safety, crisis management, sustainable growth, greater peace and prosperity for all. As such, Thailand believes BRICS could be a voice for developing and emerging economies in the global south and serve as a force to shift the dynamics of financial governance to favor all nations, end quote. That said, Thailand implicitly supports BRICS' new financial payment system. This agenda is, in one way or the other, antagonistic to the US hegemonic world. The third challenge is international. Thai foreign policy toward BRICS has perplexed many Western powers. This is largely because of a clash of different interpretations, On the one hand, for the West, Thailand dual applications to BRICS and OECD pose more significant challenges and concerns due to their diverging value systems. The West ascertains that BRICS Plus is politically, if not geopolitically different. The grouping fundamentally aims at developing an alternative multipolar world and contesting US-led liberal rule-based order. Russia in particular calls for the de-dollarization of global trade and finance, an alternative international payment system that could debunk Western sanctions. On the other hand, for Thailand and perhaps other Southeast Asian neighbors, BRICS means a vehicle for the South-South economic cooperation and the advancement of interests of and for the global South. Foreign Minister Maritz claimed that in various interviews that Thailand does not view joining BRICS as choosing sides or acting as a counterbalance to any other groups. According to him, Thailand is unique in that we are friends with all countries and enemies to none. We can act as a bridge between developed countries and BRICS members, as well as link BRICS with other groups. Unlike the Muslim majority Malaysia and Indonesia, Thailand does not take a critical stance against the American roles in the Middle East or Israel-Palestine conflict as a modicum to diversify international alignment. Though Bangkok supports the two-state solution and the immediate cessation of hostility. Above, Thailand sees the critical importance of BRICS in revising a more inclusive global system that champions a win-win outcome over winner takes all. For the Thai government, being part of BRICS does not mean the country joined a certain bloc, but rather partaking in every forum from the global north to global south. So in addition, BRICS accession has no string attached, whereas IPEF and OECD membership is a liberal standardization. So let me conclude my first round. I think Thailand's BRIC partner country status is to a certain extent answer the short-termisms of the government. Like other ASEAN neighbors, the government must feel that it is better to follow than to be left behind in the BRICS expansion. For the Thai leaders, participating in the BRICS is not choosing side per se. Rather, it is part of multi-alignment, befriending all countries. From a comparative perspective, this is not solely a Thai-style diplomacy, but can be seen in foreign policies of other three ASEAN countries as BRICS partners. By retaining a breadth of options, Bangkok can continue to reap its economic benefits of multi-alignment and multi-stakeholderisms. However, there are lingering puzzles for Thai foreign policy in the near future. To what extent does BRICS Plus answer that strategic vision? Is BRICS Plus agenda in the long run compatible with Thailand's? Is it an opportunity on constraint upon Thai multi-aligned or omnidirectional foreign policy? What are the costs and benefits of partaking in BRICS Plus? In a nutshell, Thailand should pursue a more comprehensive and active strategic equilibrium as a strategy rather than risking to be hedging by default. To navigate the bifurcation, if not by polarization of world politics, should position itself as a middle power, adopt middling strategies. The key question is whether and how the BRICS memberships will contribute to the whole of the government approach to foreign policy and serve overall national interests of Thailand. Perhaps Thailand's overall foreign policy thinking is now in line with the old saying that friends in need, a friend in need is friend indeed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Titipat. That was an excellent presentation. It got us off to a great start. Thank you for pointing out the four motivations of Thailand for joining BRICS. Of course, economics was very much the driving force and as you put it. But the fourth factor is something that I think many people are unaware of, that Thaksin has a close relationship with President Putin. In fact, when Thaksin first visited Russia in 2001, I think it was, President Putin drove him to the airport on his way home. And when Thaksin was overthrown in a coup in 2006, it was Putin who offered him political asylum, if I'm not wrong. So that's important. So you've mentioned that relationship, but I wonder if I could, before we move on to the second presenter, Jitipat, is you haven't mentioned China very much. And China is also a close partner, than Russia, much more important. Do you know of any conversations that have come between Thai leaders, Thai diplomats, and China about BRICS? Yeah, go ahead, please.
Okay, I haven't heard much about that with China's talk about BRICS with Thailand, but I think I heard a lot about Russia talking to Thailand more on the BRICS, partly because of host of the BRICS this year. But at the same time, I think it's behind the motivation is there behind the motivation of Thailand's engagement with BRICS. With the original 5 members, I think China is at the top of Thailand's economic cooperation and dependency. I think this is a long-term trend. Since you think about the coup d'etat in Thailand, that I think Thailand has been closer to China and to a lesser extent Russia in the last decade also. So I think that would be behind the idea when Thailand think about BRICS member.
Thanks for that, Jitipat. So if I could move on to our second speaker, Dr. Ong Kian Ming, to talk about Malaysia and BRICS. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thanks to ISEAS and also to Ian for moderating today's discussion. Great that I can follow on with what Jitipat has said and shared already. But before I move on, I just want to clarify that whatever I'm sharing is not representative of the view of the Malaysian government. So I'm no longer a member of parliament and not part of the ruling government's administration. So with that being said, I'd like to divide my presentation into 3 parts. The first part is I'll share what I think are the motivations for Malaysia to join BRICS. On this part, I'd like to make a useful contrast between Thailand and Malaysia in the sense that the motivations on the part of Malaysia are much more driven by political considerations rather than economic considerations. That's the first part. The second part, I'll talk about potential opportunities for Malaysia in terms of the upside and benefits of joining BRICS. And then the last part, I'm going to highlight certain challenges. So I'll have 3 points in each of these parts on motivations, opportunities, as well as challenges. For motivations, I think the first point I'd like to make is that this is very much part and parcel of Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim's larger balancing priorities on the global stage. And I can see, and many people can see that this is something that Prime Minister Anwar has said explicitly, and he's also demonstrated this with action as well. So, for example, visits to China has got to be sort of like balanced with visits to the United States. This was very apparent in 2023 when he visited China twice. And then he also visited the United States twice. Although not on official visits, this was more to do with visits to the UN and also to San Francisco as part of APEC. So, when the opportunity came up for Prime Minister Anwar to have the opportunity to share the global stage with President Putin in Vladivostok as part of the Eastern Economic Forum, he took that opportunity to not just go, but also to make a pitch for Malaysia's application to join BRICS, which he had already announced earlier this year in July, just a couple of days before the visit by Premier Li Qiang from China to celebrate Malaysia and China's 50th anniversary for the restoration or the commencement of diplomatic ties. And I can talk more about that, in terms of Malaysia's positioning vis-a-vis China later on. So, that's the first motivation, part and parcel of this larger balancing act by Prime Minister Anwar. I think the second motivation is the desire by Anwar to try to project himself as an important leader on the global stage vis-a-vis the global south as well as ASEAN. And this is, I think, something that is very near and dear to Prime Minister Anwar in the sense that he sees his own sort of like a political history and also political positioning as a leader to be very much in line with the priorities of the global south. Even though I think it has moved on quite a bit in terms of economic development from when he first became sort of like prominent in the Malaysian political stage back in the early 1980s. I think he still projects himself in that way. And any opportunity to be part and parcel of an initiative that represents many of the major powers in the global south, I think he would not to waste this opportunity. And it's not just, I think, in terms of going to Russia this year, but more importantly, next year, when Brazil is the host of BRICS. And I think he himself sees President Lula as a much closer sort of like a kindred spirit compared to President Putin, in my opinion, because of similar shared backgrounds and also priorities representing the so-called, the dispossessed and the marginalized in their respective countries. So that's the second motivation. And I think the third motivation on the part of Prime Minister Anwar and also Malaysia is to use the BRICS platform to raise Malaysia's profile and also Malaysia's position on international issues of concern. And of course, at the top of the list for Malaysia at this point in time would be the war and the conflict that's currently happening in the Middle East, starting with Gaza and now expanded to include Lebanon and Iran as well. So this was one of the points that was prominently made by Prime Minister when he went to Vladivostok. Some mention of Ukraine was there, but I think this was very much downplayed. I think Malaysia is much more concerned because of domestic politics as well on the issues that are happening in the Middle East. So these are the three motivations, and you can see this is driven largely by political considerations rather than economic ones. Second sort of like segment of my presentation is on the opportunities presented to Malaysia as a result of the application to join BRICS and now accepted as a partner country. I think the first opportunity that Malaysia has is the fact that we jumped on the bandwagon relatively early. Like I said just now, Malaysia, indicated our interest to join BRICS in July this year, shortly after Thailand expressed their interest. And from of the conversations that has been sort of like floated at the foreign ministry level in Malaysia, this is through other sources that I have access to. The recommendation given to the Malaysian Prime Minister was that Malaysia should only consider applying to join BRICS next year when Brazil is the host, rather than this year when Russia is the host, primarily because of the potential dangers of Prime Minister Anwar going to Russia in terms of perception from the West, especially from EU countries as well as from the United States. But that Prime Minister Anwar perhaps understood geopolitics more so than the ministry, the foreign ministry officials, and by making the indication of wanting to join and going to Vladivostok, that maybe has positioned Malaysia better. And the fact that Vietnam and Indonesia later on also formally indicated their interest and to apply to be members gives Malaysia certain cover. So I think that kind of bandwagoning positive effect is something that is an opportunity for Malaysia. The second area of opportunity is with regards to being in the room for important conversations with regards to using alternative payment systems or international payment systems, more specifically, as an alternative to SWIFT. And I think this is an important discussion to have because Malaysia has expressed a desire formally and publicly to be part and part of the de-dollarization process for our own interests, for our own economic and commercial interests. And this is so that we can have less exposure of the ringgit to gyrations in exchange rate vis-a-vis the dollar, and also wanting to think ahead perhaps if, let's say, there may be a situation where China gets put under pressure by the United States and even the European Union in the international payment systems ecosystem. China being Malaysia's largest trading partner, we will want to have this kind of alternative payment system, channel. And I think being in the room would also facilitate greater understanding and greater deliberations on what these alternative payment systems can function in reality, and also very importantly, the prospects of perhaps China willing to use the renminbi as an anchor currency with regards to this alternative payment system, because as we know, Malaysia being an open trading nation, and others also wanting to, increase their trade relationship within the BRICS member countries, the need for an anchor currency is something that needs to be discussed. And the third area of opportunity will be as a result of Malaysia's very public signaling. This also opens up conversations and possibilities for other commercial, educational, and even social collaborations at the government and also non-government level. And I think this would send a signal, for example, to education and other institutions, even commercial institutions and organizations to explore commercial relationships and partnerships with Malaysian companies. Although that is not something that's been really played by UNWA, I think these are all opportunities that can rise as a result of Malaysia's very public signaling to want to join BRICS. The third and final segment, I want to talk about some challenges. And I think the first challenge that Malaysia may not be fully prepared for is we may get caught up in the crossfires of US and EU actions, especially on Russian-related government as well as commercial engagements with, private sector companies and also with government entities, right? And this, as an example, the US has flagged, a Malaysian company and found them guilty of trading sensitive electronics equipment that can be used for dual-use purposes, to Russia. And I think opening up the doors would open up opportunities, like I said previously, but also opens up some challenges if, let's say, Malaysian companies are not aware of the possible repercussions against them as a result of EU and more specifically US action. The challenge that Malaysia faces is the perception that we may be tipping over more towards one side in what I've written about in an op-ed in the Fulcrum, which is UNWA's unbalanced balancing act, right? So to want to seem to be really playing the balancing act in terms of visiting one country and another, including Russia, for example, the perception may be Malaysia is tipping over one side a little bit more, and this also has, in terms of perception of Malaysia with regards to US-China relations. And then the third challenge, this is more another personal observation, which would be the lack of strategic coordination on how to take advantage of BRICS in relation to engagements at the government and non-government levels, right? So I'm not sure to what extent this has been well thought through throughout the different government agencies, and also in terms of engagement at the private sector level on how to better take advantage of our relationship, not just with Russia, but also with the other countries that are now part of the larger BRICS family. So I'll just stop there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kan Ming. That's also another excellent presentation, which also had the same structure as Jitipat's on looking at the motivations and the challenges of becoming a BRICS partner. I just want to ask you a brief question about Prime Minister Anwar. When Anwar was in Vladivostok at the Eastern Economic Forum, President Putin gave him an invitation to attend the Kazakh summit. which I believe Anwar accepted. And I thoroughly expected to see him there, but he wasn't there. The foreign minister was there. Do we know what happened there?
There's not been any official explanation for that. One way to look at it would be, this took place, the Kazan conference took place very close to the tabling of the Malaysian budget, and Anwar is the finance minister, so he needed to give more attention to that. But another way of looking at it would be after his visit to Vladivostok, I think a message that was sent to Wisma Putra and to his office personally was that there can be certain challenges with regards to Malaysia's hosting of ASEAN next year. Meaning, if let's say the invitation was sent, which it was, for President Putin to attend the ASEAN summit, this may result in some leaders from other countries, specifically the European Union as well as the United States, to not attend the leaders summit that will be hosted by Malaysia next year. So I think that message was sent quite clearly, and the Prime Minister's office may have decided that yes, let's not risk this, and we will send one of our ministers instead to attend Malaysia's behalf.
Thank you for clarifying that. Excellent. Okay, we have exactly 4 minutes left for Q&A. So for those of you in the room, please raise your hand, state your name, and your affiliation, and your question in brief, please. For those of you online, please submit your questions in Q&A box, not the chat box, the Q&A box. Again, stating your name and affiliation. So for instance, Kang Fan, who submitted a question, if you could send us your affiliation as well, please. And just to remind you once again that we're conducting this webinar under House rule. So I'll start with questions in the room. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, sir, you here.
So, good morning, and thank you very much for your insightful presentations. My question, actually 2 questions.
Your name and affiliation.
Sorry, I'm Tawfiq Khan. I'm a student from ISEAS. And my 2 questions are, first, what will the effects of these individual bids to join BRICS, I mean, not only BRICS, but also OECD and IPF have on ASEAN internal cohesion, since not all countries have decided to join these forums? And the second, and as a follow-up question, could the possibility of ASEAN joining as a group, like the African Union did in the G20, be a possibility? Thank you very much.
Okay. Judy, do you want to go first on those 2 questions, please?
Okay, I think these 2 questions are related. So I will first one, the effects of joining BRICS. There's I think the question in the online as well, which might related to whether and to what extent BRICS expansion contribute to gradual ASEAN. I think there is ongoing debates, in particular in the news media. I think first of all, BRIC is not a very specific group, right? It's just another group in line with multiple that ASEAN has played constructive with, part of ASEAN Plus activities. The second point I think is BRICS might diverge already divided ASEAN. So in other words, at least it does not, ASEAN does not reach a consensus on BRICS, of course. And I think that's might explain the possibility of the lack of possibility of ASEAN joining BRICS as a group as well. So that's the answer of the first one and the second one. How about the effects of joining BRICS might contribute to individual countries? In the case of Thailand, I think we might need to take time to look at the effects, but the prospect of the implications that Thailand expect from being BRICS members, I think one, I think is about economic. collaboration, which is one of the key factor for the Paetongtarn government in next few years, if the government survive. The second one, I think, is the interest in the alternative financial in architecture, which is still quite preliminary. I think Russia called for this, but I think there is still some dissensus among the BRICS members, in particular the original members, with regard to the financial architecture. But I think Thailand has long-term concerns about this, especially since the Asian financial crisis of 1997, which hard hit Thailand economy immensely. It started from Thailand, so some call it Tom Yam Goong crisis back in 1997. And after that, if you remember, Thailand, together with some other countries, China included, Malaysia, talk about the Chiang Mai initiative, okay, as a key mechanisms of this alternative international financial architecture. And with the R5, I think it's very interesting because all five BRICS national currencies start with the letter R, right? Ruble, renminbis, real, ruble, and rand. Now it's no longer the case, but R5, I think it's part of the alternative financial architecture. However, I think it will create a kind of constraint as well, because all financial transactions is part of the dollar-led economy for many decades since the Bretton Woods system began in 1944, okay, and shortly after Second World War. So we will create a kind of drawback from the U.S. It will draw back from U.S. direct attack. It will be a kind of direct attack on U.S. Financial hegemony since the Bretton Woods era. So I think that might be the benefit, but still with some challenges for Thai economy as well. The third part, which I think might be of interest of Thailand, is about the infrastructure investment in the country. So it will be a kind of another issues. Thank you.
Just before you start, I mean, just to Kang Fan's question, it's can the BRICS expansion contribute to gradual disintegration of ASEAN? Disintegration is far too strong a word. I think the essence of this question is to what extent do minilateral organizations undermine the issue of ASEAN centrality? Rather than BRICS isn't going to lead to the disintegration of ASEAN or Quad or any of those. It's about ASEAN centrality.
Sure, yeah, just two quick points. I think on the second part about ASEAN joining as a group, it's just a no. That's not going to happen. But I think the first question is more interesting, and I think the two responses I would have would be, if you look at the fact that certain countries in ASEAN were invited to IPEF and others were not, that discussion with regards to IPEF has not affected ASEAN internal cohesion in any way, shape, or form. Right. So of course, the invitation to IPEF probably did not evoke very strong reactions from China, from Russia. As far as I'm concerned, in the same way that Malaysia's application to want to join BRICS would have been seen with some concern on the part of the EU and also the US. So that would be my first response. Not very much, but I think the second response I would have would be to flip the script around, to say, would the fact that we have 4 ASEAN countries wanting to join BRICS and now are partner members, could these 4 ASEAN countries cohere together and come up with some sort of a more positive agenda to contribute to the BRICS discussion? And maybe just a speculative thought, the fact that we've made quite a lot of progress on the digital economy framework within the ASEAN context, could that be something that the ASEAN 4 would want to take and say, are there more things that we can do on the digital economy front between the BRICS countries, and this would be seen as something that's perhaps less sensitive and less controversial compared to talking about an alternative payment system, because the DIFA is something that the Americans and the Europeans are looking at quite closely, and perhaps even some of the BRIC countries as well.
Thank you. Oh, suddenly. Wow. My WhatsApping actually worked for once. Okay, so I'll start here. Joanne, please, first. Joanne, do you want to go ahead? And then I'll go to Sharon, and then I'll move to the right side.
Yes, thank you, Ian. I'm Joanne from the Institute, and I actually also have a follow-up question on the nexus between BRICS and ASEAN, since that was the first question asked. And actually, I don't see BRICS as really an ASEAN plus activity. I just see it as a separate activity altogether. And I also agree with you, Ian, that it's not going to disintegrate ASEAN. There's no way. We are almost 60 years old, and something like that is not going to pull us apart. But what it might do is to actually alter ASEAN's alignment in some ways, yeah, moving forward. So my question to Dr. Ong is actually about Malaysia's chairmanship next year. So we know that Malaysia is going to chair ASEAN. So do you think that Prime Minister Anwar will take the opportunity to really push for closer ties, or to do sort of a bridging with the BRICS members, and maybe also, I don't know, invite President Putin to the ASEAN summit? What do you think are the possibilities? Thank you. Maybe Sharon has similar questions.
No, I don't care about ASEAN, and I also
That's Sharon is the coordinator of the ASEAN Studies Center here. Over to you, Sharon.
Sorry, I didn't get Ian's SMS or WhatsApp. But I just have a couple of questions. One, understanding Malaysia's motivation seems much easier than to understand Thailand's motivations. And I wonder if this motivation in terms of Thailand joining BRICS for its economic benefits and all that, do you know whether there's been a proper cost-benefit analysis done at the ministry's level, or as you mentioned, a kind of hedging by default approach? It seems to me that they are just sleepwalking into this without calculating the costs of the membership. And so I wonder if there's been any more deeper thinking behind that, because you mentioned that at this moment, Thailand sees a need for structural economic reform. So how would the BRICS help Thailand to do that? And instead, should Thailand be focusing more of its energies and attention to its OECD session? The second one is kind of dethroning the SWIFT system, right? Which at the institutional banking level is so widely accepted. What are the possibilities that this can be done by a grouping of countries that has very little actually financial leverage over the global system? Could this be done, just thinking out of the box, using alternative blockchain payment systems? Because right now you're talking about de-dollarization, but in a very simplistic form, it is just, I buy your goods and I pay you in renminbi and I accept that. But then at the SWIFT level, it's completely different. It means that, you have to get the entire world to accept that. So I don't know if maybe Kun Jitipat on the Thailand question and on the other one for SWIFT.
Who wants to go first?
Sure. Yeah, on Malaysia, Joanne's question on Malaysia's chairmanship of ASEAN next year. If you sort of like study and look at Prime Minister Anwar's modus operandi, wherever he goes, he would want to please whichever leader he's engaging with, and to try to minimize cognitive dissonance. So in the context of ASEAN chair, I think he would want to please as many leaders as possible, and want to have a setting where there can be minimal disruptions or incidents that can lose face on the part of the Malaysian government. With that in mind, I think he would go for whatever common denominators that would be out there. And I think one of the some of the more strategic imperatives may be to see whether he can organize some sort of tete-a-tete and facilitate a discussion between whoever is going to be the president of the United States and also President Xi, right? That may be one of the things that can really capture the imagination of the global audience. But for that to happen, that is predicated perhaps on President Putin not coming to Malaysia. Because if President Putin comes, you can be sure that, sorry, I take that back. If it's President Trump, we don't know, the scope of unpredictability becomes much greater, right? But if it's President Harris, I think the chances of that happening would be much less, right? So I think, that will be part and parcel of the juggling act that Anwar has to undertake. On the part about Sharon's question about the Malaysian imperative being much more obvious than Thailand, I would say this: the way I've couched it is very much in terms of the political imperatives that Anwar himself wants to pursue. In the Malaysian context, there has been an attempt to try to say that there is also the economic narrative. But what I think a lot of people in Malaysia fail to understand is that BRICS is not a free trade agreement, right? So whatever increase in trade that you want to result from joining BRICS, it will be minimal at best. And I think the kind of cost-benefit analysis probably is not even on the agenda as far as I know. On the part of my former ministry, MITI, just sort of like very motherhood statements about the sizes of the GDPs of the different BRICS countries and the kind of total trade that it commands at the global stage, especially with China being the linchpin. So the final point with regards to the alternative to SWIFT. There was an Economist article that came out earlier this week pointing to a separate discussion that is being undertaken by the Bank of International Settlements in Switzerland on different modalities in which settlements can take place. And I think that would probably be something that's more hopeful in terms of coming up with an alternative to SWIFT that does not seek to undermine SWIFT in a very fundamental way. But specifically to, let's say, our trade with China, for example, which is the most important trading partner for ASEAN countries. If let's say there are moves to do the kind of non-dollar settlements, which is actually being pursued, I think, by most central banks together with the People's Bank of China, PBOC. If that can be increased and highlighted in a very obvious way, then that very natural process of de-dollarization would already be taking place. Then the question that we have to ask is BRICS necessary for greater de-dollarization, especially for ASEAN countries, to take place? My initial instinct would be to say, not necessarily. You still can pursue it on a bilateral basis. The department has talked about that as well. But if, let's say, by being in a room, you are at least aware of what's being discussed, especially within closed corridors, that may be a useful access for us to have in that context, and maybe even having some sort of an ASEAN position, not ASEAN position, but the ASEAN 4 position or approach towards this issue may be something that's worth considering.
Okay, thank for the questions. I would like to have a quick reaction to Joanne's points first. I agree that ASEAN disintegration is too far-fetched. I think that's very clear. It might put a stain on ASEAN, of course, but I think BRIC is no substitute for ASEAN. I think that's quite clear. Another point, I think we might need to treat BRICS is just one more in other regional institutions that ASEAN can play with, like European Union, ASEAN, EU, ASEAN, and others, relations with other organizations. Another point that I think about with regard to ASEAN issues, ASEAN centrality, that Ian rephrased the question very well. I think ASEAN has other big issues and problems for themselves. Think about Myanmar, South China Seas. I think BRICS is part of these broader questions, right? So that's just one thing. Another thing, just quick thought, ASEAN centrality. I think some scholars might say it's a myth already, right? As Amitabh Acharya said that it's a myth, right? He's written about this for many years ago, but I think it's raised this question about ASEAN Center institutional framework. But I think for the past few years, ASEAN centrality has been already bypassed by two things. First, by US and China new institutional frameworks like minilateralisms, Quad AUKUS, in the case of US-led organizations, as well as China's BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, that have already bypassed ASEAN-led institutional frameworks, and also internal device has also undermined ASEAN centrality very much in the past few years, if not decades. Just my quick reaction. With regard to the question about Thailand's about cost-benefit calculation, so far we haven't seen that or obvious cost-benefit calculation coming out. At least publicly, we don't know. We are not aware of that cost-benefit calculation. But I'm quite sure that they talk about cost benefits in the government. But which lead me to the second point. It is not a kind of whole-of-government approach. So in other words, it's a kind of top-down approach. It is a political will that the Thai government or say Thai government in the past would like to succeed as a quick win, rather than adopting a kind of long-term economic reform. Thinking from the bureaucratic point of view, I think Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as I learned, try to has put a lot of efforts on OECD membership rather than BRICS membership. There's concerns among MFA top leaderships with regard to BRICS memberships as well. So I think it's a kind of compartmentalization of foreign policy, in particular foreign economic policy in Thailand, between short-term and long-term economic reform like OECDs, which I think they have been compartmentalized through different bureaucracies to different organization agencies within the government. So I think this is part of what I call hedging by default. I think this government, the Paetongtarn government, try to transcend hedging by default approach during the Prayut government in the last 9 years in the government, but still the remnants of hedging by default approach remain. When I talk about hedging by default, what does it mean? First, I think there's what can we say, no whole of the government approach. Two, the foreign policy has been shaped by bureaucratic politics more than a kind of whole government approach. Bureaucracies, they have diverse and diverging bureaucracies pursuing different stances towards major powers, and they have different stakes as well. So in other words, it looked like a hedging, but in fact, it is not a hedging it's not strategic hedging, right? Because different bureaucracies go in different direction. Like the Navy might develop closer ties with China, while at the same time the Army might develop closer to US and so on. So this is kind of, it appears like hedging, but it's not the case. It's not come from strategies of the government. Lastly, I think BRICS, I think there's a kind of idea lingering behind the government or even in a private sector about the problem of missing out, that it's catching the train, right? So if Malaysia, Vietnam, Indonesia are on the train of BRICS, Thailand could not miss out, right, or left behind. So I think that's the kind of mentality that happened in the government. So this is related to the question of being friend with anyone, or actually we want to be part of, all cooperation frameworks. Thank you.
Ian, can I just ask Chitipat one question, and I'll compare and contrast it to the Malaysian example. You mentioned that on the part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the bureaucrats would prefer Thailand to focus more on OECD compared to BRICS. Maybe can you explain to me and maybe to others who are interested, why is that the case? And I'll share what I think, on the part of Malaysia, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs would have recommended to the Prime Minister to consider applying for BRICS next year, because they know that if, let's say, Prime Minister Anwar goes to Russia this year, which he did, it may jeopardize some of the priorities that we want to pursue hosting ASEAN. That's on the part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. On the part of the ministry, my former ministry, Investment, Trade and Industry, they just look at the relative size of the trade with Russia vis-a-vis EU, US. For China, we have other engagement points, especially through ASEAN already. So yeah, on that point, the bureaucratic concern.
Yeah. I think one is about relative size as well, because Thailand's trade relations with OECD is larger than BRICS. But BRICS is appealing in a way, but it's still emerging, right? So Ministry of Foreign Affairs think about the relative size in an actual, genuine way, right? The second one, I think, it's about the long-term economic reforms, which is crucial for not only Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but also other economic departments that call for or support kind of membership in OECD. I think the third one, looking from not only policy tools, but also the policy goal of the country. I think being part of the club developed country, I think it's crucial. I think Ministry of Foreign Affairs has Indonesia in mind when they think about that, in particular Indonesia under Jokowi, right? That it aspires to be OECD, right? As part of being a developed country, and so on and so forth. So in terms of this is a long-term goal that I think Ministry of Foreign Affairs and some other bureaucracies strive for.
Thank you. I'm going to take questions from this side, and I'm going to take a few online, and then I'll come back to this side. So, yes. And is there anyone else on this side while we're here? Okay, I'll ask. Lady over here. Okay.
Okay, thank you. I'm Hok An. I'm from ISEAS. My first question is, to what extent do you think the tightening of ties among the BRICS countries has been a factor that Thailand and Malaysia have observed and responded to, the Putin-Xi budding bromance? And I mean, it's at a more formal level as well between Russia and China, and then warming Russia and India, and even South Africa and Russia, of course, historic ties, and it's taken quite a starkly different stance with Russia, Ukraine versus against Israel. So yeah, have they seen that it is something to respond to because of this evidence of tightening ties among those countries? To Kenming, this is also related, right, about sort of multiple alliances and OECD. And I found that the successor, Tengku Zafrul, is the one that has made a statement about Malaysia might join OECD. Will Malaysia join OECD, and what will be its reasons to do that?
Thank you. Thank you very much for very interesting presentations. My name is Åsa Rognes. I'm with the Swedish Institute of International Affairs, so perhaps a bit of a European perspective here. Some of the questions have already been asked that I had as well, but I was thinking about the two things. One is the relations with Russia and the position. The discussion in Europe very much last week was the fact that Guterres attended the meeting and how to sort of balance this support for the UN Charter and then the actions from the Russian side, and what then that means in the context of joining or becoming partners with BRICS. Where is the UN and views on the UN here, I suppose, is one question. The other one is also economic, because we've talked a bit about the economic reasons to join, etc. We have trade negotiations going on with free trade agreements with the EU. Now, how are those valued as opposed to joining these more formal organizations, such as the OECD, which is not about trade per se, just as BRICS is not about trade per se. Thank you.
Sure, yeah. Quite a lot to unpack there. To what I'll tie my response to what Hoang said just now and what OSA, right? OSA said just now with regards to BRICS tightening their relationship and also relevance, also the UN response or response to the UN. I would say that at least insofar as Malaysia's approach is concerned, the way I interpret it would be BRICS coming together to try to provide an alternative voice to the UN. And because I think Prime Minister Anwar sees this as an interesting platform, he chose to use this platform to voice out some of his concerns, as opposed to going to the United Nations General Assembly this year. So rather than going to the UNGA, he chose to go to Vladivostok. Right, so I think that kind of narrative is one that, from an optics perspective, Anwar sees and values because he's a very much optics and public positioning kind of a leader, right? And yeah, and linked to that would be my response towards the possibility of Malaysia joining OECD. If you go back to the narrative of wanting to be a leader of the Global South, public positioning, then it would make less sense for Anwar to push for OECD membership. And this also answers the question, Osa's question about FTAs with the EU. Because I'm quite familiar with this, having been in the Ministry of Trade, it's a much tricky and long drawn process. Malaysia is going through our 14th or 15th round of our negotiations for the European Free Trade Area. And that's a much smaller number of countries, Switzerland, Liechtenstein, Iceland, and Norway. Right? When you're talking about EU, it's much more complicated. So my concern would be, if let's say you go by that optics rationale, the low-hanging fruit of being seen with global leaders within the BRICS setting where you don't really have many tough decisions to make, versus the longer drawn process where the economic value added could be potentially much larger, but the concessions that you have to make would also potentially be more tricky within the context of whether it's Malaysia or Thailand's negotiations on the FTAs. That is something to take note of. And maybe final point for this part, on the geopolitics side, if there are actors who on the international stage that can recognize this, they would also be able to possibly strategically take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you for very interesting questions. Let me unpack which one should go first. I think with the tightening ties between the BRICS country, in particular Putin Sea, I think Thailand, I think for the last decades also has not taken a liberal stance. So in other words, Thailand has presented itself as a neutral on various topics, in particular Russia, Ukraine war, and so on and so forth. So Thailand has posed a kind of neutral